My friends, listen now, for this is not just about content, it is about calling. This is not merely about algorithms and uploads, but about awakening, about destiny, about the purpose for which you have been placed in this moment, in this time, in this world of voices clamoring for attention. What is the key to fast growth? What content should you bring forth? The answer does not begin with the platform. It begins with the message, for the message is the seed, and the seed must be alive. First, I tell you, speak to the need. Not just the want, but the need. There is a famine in the land, not of bread, but of meaning, of truth, of purpose. Your content must become like Joseph's grain in the time of famine, and offered freely, but carrying value that saves lives, that restores hope, that stirs sleeping hearts. Second, be bold in the voice you carry. The world does not need another echo. It needs a trumpet. Your uniqueness is not your weakness. It is your assignment. If the watchman sees danger and does not sound the trumpet, the blood is on his hands. So sound it. Be distinct. Speak as one who has something eternal to say. Third, bring revelation. The scroll must be opened. The people long for insight, for wisdom not just from men, but from the Spirit. Whether you speak of cars, of business, of life, of struggle, let it be wrapped in meaning, let it carry light, let your content not just inform, but transform. Fourth, build not for applause, but for impact. The wise builder does not build on sand, but on the rock. The views may rise and fall like waves, but content built on truth will remain. Even one soul touched, even one life changed, that is the measure of your true growth. In a world oversaturated with noise, content, and fleeting distractions, the first and most vital principle for fast growth is to speak to the need, not just the want. At the surface, people may appear to be drawn to entertainment, to trends, to the next viral moment. But beneath the surface, there is a deeper hunger, a longing, a void that cannot be filled by the shallow or the temporary. This is the need that lies beneath the want. The need is not always visible, but it is always present. And those who create with their eyes fixed only on what is popular may gain momentary attention, but they will not touch the core of a person's heart. They will not build something that lasts. People may want amusement, but what they need is truth. They may seek pleasure, but what they need is meaning. They may ask for ease, but what they need is purpose. And in your content, if you focus only on catering to surface desires, you may build an audience, but you will not build a movement. The most powerful content, the kind that spreads like fire and impacts lives, always speaks to a deeper need. It sees through the masks, the trends, the superficial, and it aims for the heart. To speak to the need requires discernment. It requires listening, not just to what people are saying, but to what they are not saying. What is the question behind the question? What is the cry behind the comment? If you can hear the silent ache in the hearts of your audience, you can create content that feels like a lifeline. If you speak into their confusion with clarity, into their chaos with calm, into their hopelessness with light, then your content becomes more than content. It becomes a voice of hope, a signal in the storm. This principle also requires courage, because the needs of people are not always comfortable topics. To speak to the need often means to speak to pain, to loss, to fear, to longing, to broken dreams. It may mean breaking from what is popular, or saying what others are afraid to say, but therein lies the power. The truth may not always be liked, but it is always needed. And in a world starving for authenticity, the voice that dares to be real, to be raw, to be honest, becomes a magnet for those who are tired of pretending. When you create from this place not to impress, not to entertain, not even to go viral, but to meet a need, you step into a higher dimension of influence. Your content begins to resonate not just in minds, but in souls. People may forget a clever title, a trending format, or a polished edit, but they will never forget how something made them feel. They will remember the moment they felt seen, understood, encouraged, challenged, awakened. That is what happens when you speak to the need. It also requires you to connect your own story to the message. What have you overcome? What have you learned in the quiet places of struggle? What truths have pulled you through the darkness? These things, your battles, your lessons, your scars, are not just personal. They are powerful. When you speak from your own journey, you don't just share knowledge. You impart experience, and experience carries authority. People are not only looking for someone who knows the answers, they're looking for someone who has lived them. Be bold and distinct in your voice. In a world where imitation is often easier than authenticity, where the trends are louder than truth, the temptation to blend in is strong. But growth, true, fast, and meaningful growth, comes not from copying the multitude, but from daring to sound different. Your voice is not just your words or tone. It is your essence, your perspective, your story, your spirit. It is the combination of all that you are, expressed through the content you create. To be bold in your voice is to resist dilution. It is to speak, write, and create with clarity, conviction, and courage, even when it cuts across the grain of what is comfortable or accepted. Boldness is not arrogance. It is not shouting to be heard. It is the quiet confidence of a person who knows what they carry, who has been shaped in the fire of experience, and who refuses to whisper truth when it must be declared. It is the refusal to apologize for being different, for seeing the world in a unique way, for standing on ground that others have abandoned. The bold voice doesn't seek to offend, but neither does it seek to please. It seeks to reveal, to awaken, to move. It carries weight because it comes from a place of deep conviction. To be distinct in your voice is to resist the mold. It is to avoid becoming an echo of 100 other creators, chasing formulas that promise success but strip away soul. There is only one you, and that is your greatest power. Your upbringing, your struggles, your triumphs, your worldview. All of these form a lens that no one else can replicate. When you borrow another person's voice, you may attract their audience, but you lose your identity. And in the end, what people connect with most is not perfection. It is authenticity. They are drawn to the real. They follow those who sound like no one else because those voices cut through the noise. The bold and distinct voice often begins in obscurity. It may be misunderstood, even rejected at first, but over time it gathers momentum. It gathers those who resonate, those who are waiting to hear someone finally speak what they've only dared to think. And in that moment, a community is born, not of fans, but of followers, not of passers-by, but of people whose lives are impacted and shaped. That is the power of a distinct voice. It doesn't just attract attention, it creates alignment. It calls out to those walking the same path, carrying the same questions, seeking the same truth. This path requires persistence, because being bold means risking being judged. Being distinct means you may not go viral today. But you are not building for today. You are building for legacy, for something that grows steadily, rooted in truth, not hype. The bold voice digs deep foundations. The distinct voice stands when the winds of trendiness blow every other direction. You don't need to scream to stand out. You need to be sincere. You don't need to mimic to succeed. You need to master your own rhythm, your own message, your own sound. Find that sound, hone it, Let it evolve not through imitation, but through expression. Be unapologetically you, not the version the algorithm demands, but the one your creator designed. Speak with the fire you've been given. The world doesn't need another polished shell, it needs a living voice. One that is awake, one that is unafraid, one that is set apart. Deliver content with revelation and depth. In a time when the surface level dominates, when swipes are quicker than thoughts and scrolling has replaced stillness, revelation is the rare gold. It is not enough to post what is already known. It is not enough to echo what is already said. Revelation brings something new, something that pierces the fog, something that shifts the perspective and shakes the soul. It is more than knowledge. It is truth unveiled. It is a moment when the ordinary becomes extraordinary, when a word becomes a window, when a sentence carries the weight of awakening. To create content that carries revelation is to move beyond information. Information fills the mind, but revelation transforms it. It breaks chains, it unlocks understanding, it illuminates paths, and for those who seek fast growth, not just in numbers but in influence, this is the key. Revelation is what causes people to pause in a flood of noise. It is what makes them save your words, return to them, share them not because they're clever, but because they're alive, because they struck something deep, because they stirred something forgotten or unknown. Depth is the soil in which revelation grows. Without depth, your content is a leaf in the wind, momentary, forgettable, but with depth, it becomes a tree planted by living waters. The kind of content that does not pass with the trend, but lingers in the mind, challenges the heart, and fuels action. Depth doesn't always mean complexity. Sometimes it is the simplest truths, spoken from a place of authenticity and insight, that carry the greatest power. It's not about how many words you use, but how much meaning is packed into each one. To speak with depth requires you to live deeply. You must mine your own soul, reflect on your own experiences, wrestle with the questions others avoid. Be willing to descend into the valleys of thought where revelation is found. This is not about being intellectual. It is about being intentional, about seeing beyond the surface of things, about learning to speak not only from your mind, but from your spirit. That kind of voice cuts through because it is not hollow. It carries the weight of lived truth. Revelation is also timely. It meets people where they are, not just where you are. It requires sensitivity, the ability to discern what your audience is silently asking, what they're wrestling with, what they cannot even articulate, and then to speak into that void with clarity. That is when content stops being content and becomes a lifeline, a bridge, a spark. Revelation meets people in their confusion with wisdom, in their fear with courage, in their searching with direction. When you bring depth and revelation into your content, you are not just participating in a trend, you are establishing a voice. One that doesn't fade when the algorithm shifts. One that builds trust, loyalty, and respect. People remember who gave them insight when they were lost, who gave them perspective when they were stuck, who gave them hope when all seemed empty. That kind of content creates lasting growth, not just in followers, but in transformation. This requires a price. You cannot deliver revelation if you are not willing to receive it. And revelation comes in stillness, in reflection, in prayer, in wrestling. It is not gathered in haste, but in hunger. The world offers you formulas, but revelation is not found in formulas. It is found in fire, in the furnace of waiting, in the tension of questioning, in the courage to say what has not yet been said. Those who seek depth must be willing to dive. Those who seek revelation must be willing to wait. And those who do will find that their content carries something weightier than mere words, something eternal,